Um, Welcome to Quiet Before. We're speaking with two artists from Silverlens Gallery. Martha and Pee-wee are in the Philippines. We have the New York Gallery director, Katey Acquaro. Katey and I are in New York. I saw Martha's work at Silverlens Gallery in New York. The opportunity to hear about her work with Goodlands was really kind of revelatory for me as a Filipino American, being a born and bred New Yorker and working within the Asian American community. I've encountered how a lot of Filipino Americans deal with politics and activism and social justice and that line of being an artist but also being an activist. What was interesting to me about discovering Martha's work, I felt like I got this glimpse into the idea of being active politically here in the US versus Filipino Americans being active politically in the Philippines. If we could just go around and if you could introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Katey Acquaro, and I am the director at Silverlens New York, which opened a year ago in the US. Since then, I've had very great pleasure to work with both of the two artists that will be interviewed today.
I'm Marta Atienza. I live and work on Bantayan Island.
I am Norberto Roldan in the art community, but in this small room, I prefer to be called Pee-wee. I've been practicing art for the last 40 years, and I'm part of Silverlens, just like Marta.
Yeah, I'm really excited to do this with you, Pee-wee. When Nancy messaged, I thought I would really like to have a conversation with you. You've been really an example for me.
Marta and I are quite close. We've known each other since 2009. This is a timely conversation because Marta and I are both involved with the forthcoming Viva Excon Biennale. It's the third year. It's the 17th edition of the Biennale that is artist-led. People say it's the longest running Biennale in Southeast Asia. And there's so much for us to talk about. Goodland has been doing really great things in Bantayan Island. Bantayan Island is separate island from Cebu, the main island in central Visayas. I happen to be based in western Visayas of the archipelago. Although we are both based in the Visayas, it's really difficult for Marta and me to get together because there's no way for us to just hop on a both the easiest way for us to be together is for us to fly to Manila, go to Bantayan, or go to Rojas City in Panay Island. Viva Excon was born out of that difficulty of artists living the Visayas to get together because we are archipelagic and there's no efficient sea transport for the locals to get around all the islands. We started Viva Excon in 1990 to sort of bridge the islands, and somehow I think we have successfully at least achieved that particular task. But as far as the mission of Viva Excon, I think it's only now that we are beginning to materialize what Viva Excon was meant for 30 years ago. I am proud and happy to say that Martha and Goodland is helping us realize this dream.
If Katey could provide some context for the works being at Silverlens and why Silverlens has their relationships with you.
Nancy and I met almost exactly a year ago when the gallery opened in New York. Silverlens, the flagship location, is in Manila, and it has been in the Philippines for 20 years. And 1 year ago, Isa, Lorenzo, and Rachel Rio made very bold decision to go across the ocean and become the first Southeast Asian gallery to open an outpost in New York. I have been blessed enough to be with Isa and Rachel on that journey since the beginning. The opening show at the gallery was together with Marta Atienza and another amazing artist from Sabah, Yi Ilan. When opening this new space in New York, which was an extremely high visibility moment where you have one chance to think about how you want to land and what you want to say, Martha's work was brought into the gallery because it embodies what it means to make community engaged art endure very difficult circumstances, art that manages to talk about all of these issues while distinguishing itself from journalism. You know, it really is this fine art, and it says something other in its own language that we can't say if we're just trying to illustrate the story. That was the message that we wanted to bring for the American audience. To me, that was a hugely successful show, to show these incredible large scale video works in that environment. So then in thinking about the second year of programming, there's another highly visible slot in New York, which is the time of May. It's a big decision as to what you will put in that space when you have so many eyes uniquely kind of in the gallery, people going through the gallery in May, because it's just a high point in the art world calendar. So we came to Norberto Roldan. We came to Pee-wee because, again, his work reflects what it means to make art about very important community issues, a sustained practice, like very sincere, very long-term, huge amount of depth. That was something that we wanted to put before an American audience. Also, the diaspora. Also, we have so many people from the Philippines who come through the gallery each week, the chance to see in that setting. In advance of that as well, we will also be showing Pee-wee's work at Art Basel Miami, upcoming this December. And so that will be a very focused presentation of 4 of his pieces. And so hopefully that starts to just create a roadmap, like an introduction for people to better understand the work in a deeper way.
May is also Asian American Heritage Month. So Martha, could you start with the work that you presented and introduce us to Goodlands?
I just wanted to say something quickly because I'm so honored that you guys you speak very well of me and Goodland, but Pee-wee has given so much time, love, and commitment, and has been sharing so much for so much longer than me. So just for the record, Goodland is very, very fresh. It's very young. I'll share a little bit, in regard to Silverlens opening last year, which was crazy, overwhelming. I hadn't left the island for almost 4 years, I think. I came with this work that was really focused and worked on also during the pandemic, where really wasn't looking at the outside world, just focusing on Bantayan. And I shared just 3 works actually. Tigpanalipod is really a question of who owns land and who owns the sea. And I showed 2 black and white images of Nongtonyo Turib on the Bangka, and I also showed Fisher Folks Day. I started working in Bantayan since 2010 and working with friends, family, neighbors, mostly Fisher Folks. How I started in 2010 is really like the never-ending project. What I shared in Silverlens was really another phase, let's say. Working here for so long, I came back from Holland. I graduated from the art school there. Coming back to Bantayan and coming back to the Philippines, I was really kind of questioning on how I could make myself useful as an artist, I was also very interested in having, because I'd always worked with a video camera, and having the people that I film be the main audience, really. Maybe in the beginning, I needed their validation because I wasn't satisfied with, let's say, Western audience or kind of a white space saying, yes, oh, this is, because of it's exotic. I really wanted to know how people themselves would see themselves and the work. That is really how I work. I try to make the work together. Collaborative doesn't mean that we are just working on this video. There's actually a lot of work that we're doing. So that's why Goodland really came about. We needed an official body to operate under. Meaning that it was quite frustrating after so many years of not really being taken serious, in the sense of, if all these years I'd been working to create a voice for Fisher Folks, we had never been invited to participate or to be heard or invited to sit at the table. And so when we organized Fisher Folks Day last year in 2022, it was really about using Goodland to get the different bodies together, which is, the local government unit, Fisher Folks, NGOs, anyone connected to the sea, to have difficult conversations. We were able to create an ordinance that it's happening every year, but it's more than that. It definitely still is a challenge to really reach those goals of saying that we have these different parties coming together and talking about the future of our sea and the future of our people. Basically, I'm continuing on the work that I showed in New York. So, nung Tonyo Turib, the man that you saw standing on the boat, he's from a little island between Negros and Bantayan. I've been working there for a couple of years. And how it started really was that we were doing a battery project. We were trying to replace dry cell batteries with rechargeable batteries. And I think I can say, Pee-wee, where you are from as well in the Visayas and the rest of the Philippines, you know, I think we're all facing, fisher folks especially are facing dispossession of land. Of course, we have climate change, we have the rising of the sea, but we also have the rising of sea temperatures. But usually the climate change issue kind of gets a backseat because there's so many other pressing issues, and it's a bit a combination, you know. It's been really a discovery, like working so intensely together and trying to understand, why is this happening? Why are fisher folks being moved off land like they have no worth? And I started to, in December, kind of had a moment of saying, how can we look in a different way at what we're doing, and realizing that this is kind of an archive that we're working on, and how can we make this archive useful? How can we make fisher folks issues not just be heard and be seen? There's just so many layers and it's so complicated. One thing that I'm very interested in is that, you know, our culture is very alive and it's complex. It's not gone, it's not lost, and we're not trying to rediscover it. So the question really is, because it's still all around, we're more than 7,000 islands. Fisher folks are still on coastlines, and now they're being moved so fast off their lands because of climate change threats, but also because of commercial interest. A push for tourism, the coastal areas is prime real estate. And so what we're having here in Batayan is that fisher folks get moved far inland to housing projects. So about 9,000 families have been moved already since the super typhoon Haiyan. And really trying to understand what the big issues are and why is this happening, you know? By together with fisher folks, with young people, by together having these difficult conversations and dialogues and understanding what is going on, identifying the issues, also then looking to the future of what can we do. And this is when good land becomes vital, because as an artist, I think now I can say it, because before, you know, it's all kind of spaghetti. It's not very clear what is good land and what is me. The process that we go through becomes, let's call it the art process, is a methodology, and it's a way of working. It's a way of thinking. You can get people to dream or think about their future if you can let them imagine how it could be, that they could stay on their land, that their sea could be protected, that the abundance of fish could come back, for example. If we could get them to even see that that is possible, that they don't have to leave their country to become successful, to help their family, then comes good land, because I can bring people to that stage, but I cannot bring them to the next level, which would be, how do we specifically then work together with our local government unit? It's been really a process for me, especially since December, to really identify what my strengths are and what my roles are and what then could be this good land. That's why I was really excited that Pee-wee was saying, you know, we'd really like you guys to share what you have been doing. And Fisher Folks Day, it's not just about sharing it, but like, how could we continue that dialogue? There's always an assumption that people don't understand their issues. And most of the time, people don't have time to think about their issues because they're too busy surviving, especially if there's nothing to catch, there's nothing to eat. When small fisher folks do illegal fishing, it's because they are completely desperate. That's why they put their lives at risk. For Goodland, for example, we had done a radio program, and it was all about explaining ordinances related to the sea, which is all in English and in a very difficult type of English that even I cannot understand, and translating this in our own language so that people can really understand what these ordinances are. We are still colonized in that sense. We cannot even understand our own laws. Everything is in English. And if we pull it back to the question of why is this happening? You know, why are people not being protected? Why is our culture not being protected? It really is about a system that is still in place that was not made for us. I'm very interested in using my practice as a way to not just talk about that, but maybe find different outputs, like this archive that we're working on. If we can show the complexity of the culture, we can counter the argument of saying, why do these people not have land rights? Why are they not protected under the indigenous law, for example? The indigenous law in the Philippines says that if you haven't been touched by colonization, then you are indigenous. And that doesn't make sense for 7,000 islands with people who have been nomadic forever. The system wasn't made, and it was actually made in a way so that these people would forever not have these rights. I had this really good conversation with Marian Pastor Roses. She said to me, you can't do the little thing without understanding the big thing. I'm not saying that what we are doing is, but I think that's really how you start. You start with a way of thinking. And that's why I feel that I'll be here forever.
This conversation is happening, and why I've been thinking about it for a year is because you accomplished what you're talking about with me. The way you portray the fisher folk started me thinking about how things are interconnected. Pee-wee, I would love for you to start with speaking to the activism and work that you do, also your perspective on the history of artists organizing in the Philippines.
Thank you, Nancy. Just to say something about what Martha has already told us, it struck me to hear from her, knowing that the poorest sector in our society is our peasant sector, the farmers, and the second poorest sector in our society are the fisher folks. How can two food producing sectors be the poorest in a society like the Philippines when we claim to be very, very rich with natural resources? We are 7,000 islands. We are surrounded by waters. Our mountains are fertile. Our lands are fertile. And yet our people are going hungry, are poor. So I would like to give this as context on how I really started to become an artist. In the 80s, I was forced to move to Negros Island, the sugar producing island of the Philippines, which used to be a very, very rich island where sugar barons ruled over the earth, over the entire Philippines, in Congress and Senate and all that, without knowing that the island was going to politicize it. It's an irony that I moved to the island to become a sugar planter because I married a daughter of a sugar planter. I didn't know what a sugar planter was during that time. I didn't know what sugar planting was, what it's like. It shocked me when I started to learn about sugar planting after meeting the people who have been working in the sugar farms for how many generations. That really turned me around and started to realize that what I saw on TV and newspaper about poverty and about hunger and all that was actually coming to me face to face. This was the late 70s to the early 80s. This is the height of the protest era against the Marcos dictatorship. Even in Negros, the seat of power of most political scions and cronies of the Marcos regime, people were forced to choose between becoming allied with the left or with the administration. After the assassination of Senator Aquino, even big planters, the sugar farmers, were forced to ally with the left. In 1983, there was this big political incident after the assassination of the late Senator Ninoy Aquino, followed by a series of nationwide protest movement, picket lines in the labor sector, strikes everywhere that led to Marcos declaring a snap election to ratify his rule over the Philippines, to reaffirm his grip to power. That is when Corazon Aquino rose to the occasion and ran against Ferdinand Marcos. Of course, we all know that Cory Aquino won the election, and that resulted into people power at the EDSA. There was the EDSA revolution. Marcos was exiled to Guam. Cory Aquino took the presidency, and that is where I found myself, not only as an artist, but as an activist working with the left. In 1986, I organized the group in Bacolod called the Black Artists in Asia, which is very much credited with initiating Viva XCon, or the Visayas Islands Visual Arts Exhibition and Conference, Viva XCon for short. Prior to organizing the Black Artists in Asia, which was a very socially aware, politically aware group in the island, I was the co-chair of the Concerned Artists of the Philippines in Negros. The Concerned Artists of the Philippines was organized at the height of the Ninoy Aquino assassination mostly by progressive filmmakers headed by the more famous film director Lino Broca. In December of 1983, Lino Broca happened to fly to Bacolod to be the speaker for the Human Rights Day. That was December 10. And while he was in Bacolod, he was able to help us organize the local chapter of the Concerned Artists of the Philippines. I found myself to be the co-chair of the Concerned Artists of the Philippines that became very much part of what we called in Negros as the National Democratic Movement, composed of sectoral organizations, people's organizations, of course, mostly identified with the left. We found ourselves to be hanging out at the height of the EDSA People Revolution because as we were in Bacolod, we don't know what's going to happen in Manila at that time. The actual reality on the ground during the EDSA People Power Revolution in Negros Island was the left was almost winning the war against the Marcos dictatorship. Winning literally the CPP-NPA, which stands for the Communist Party of the Philippines, and its armed wing, the New People's Army, were practically encircling the city already of Bacolod. So the EDSA revolution actually preempted what could have been a triumph of the left over the Philippine government in that particular island. That was the whole situation I found myself in 1986. Right after the People Power Revolution. And so when Cory Aquino took power, most of the artists allied with the Concerned Artists of the Philippines thought that that was the end of the struggle against the Marcos dictatorship. Marcos was out of power, and here comes Cory Aquino, and there was a much promise for democratic space, human rights will be restored, and the structural and fundamental problems in the sugarland will be addressed. Well, we all know that any of those did not happen until today. But early on during the Cory Aquino administration, many artists decided to go with the Aquino government, giving Cory Aquino the benefit of the doubt that she will be able to solve all the problems. That is why the Black Artists in Asia was organized actually, so that people getting out of the Concerned Artists of the Philippines to shake off the stigma of being the propaganda machine of the left could not be far off from line. They can still be part of this whole struggle of winning the war against colonial powers, against capitalists, against the still existing feudal system in the sugar farms. In 1987, I was forced to self-exile myself in Sydney. And while in Sydney from 1987 to 1989, I thought about creating the Viva XCon as some sort of an extension of my practice because I was there and I thought that the only way to continue my practice as an artist was to be an organizer as well. There was no hope during that period to be a commercial artist, to have a commercial gallery represent me. There was not even any chance at all to have a studio or to develop a studio practice. For me, during the time, the most pressing matter was, while in Sydney, how can I contribute to the ongoing struggle of the people in Negros to continue the fight against existing oppressive system in the sugar farms? And so the seed actually of Viva XCon was to organize the artists all over the Visayas and to stand with the oppressed sector of not only of Negros, but the other provinces in Visayas like Samar, Leyte, some parts in Cebu, Bantayan, Bohol, and Panay Island are still very, very poor. While achieving one of the objectives of Viva XCon, of being able to bridge the islands, meaning artists were able to know each other, get together every 2 years, get in touch, discuss important issues. While we were able to achieve that, I really don't believe that over the last 30 years, we were able to touch base with the most oppressed sectors in the islands. The only time that we were able to really think about them was when I became the artistic director again of Viva X in 2018. There was no active Viva X1 in 2020 because of the pandemic. And now in 2023, when I was appointed again as artistic director, I thought this is the golden opportunity to relaunch Viva XCon as a biennale that is intended to address the problems of the rural sector, of the fisher folks, of the farmers, and of the workers. So this is actually a biennale, not for artists, but for artists to engage with the people in the locality. And that is where Martha's Goodland has become really, really important in this edition. Martha is bringing 10 of her fisher folks to Antique, where they will meet the local fishing communities in Malandog, and that's a fishing community in Antique actually, where we will hold a Fishermen Solidarity Day for fishermen to discuss about their common problems, about how to address like how many miles can you fish from the shoreline, because government is restricting that already, and many small fisher folks are suffering from it. When there are typhoons, fishermen are hard pressed at where to bring their boats, so they will not be destroyed by the typhoons, because in Antique right now the shoreline has been developed more for tourists. So walls were built, beautiful esplanades were built at the expense of small boats of small fisher folks. So
There's no
there's
access to the sea anymore,
no,
and
they
their
have
way
no
of life has been completely,
yes,
drastically cut,
that is exactly what we
changed,
wanted to show
gone.
you. The turtles who are laying eggs on the shoreline have no more shoreline to lay their eggs on, because the shoreline has been covered with really, really beautiful esplanade now, where people just go in the afternoon and have walk and yeah, enjoy the beautiful sunset and have, you know, food kiosks there.
And I think it's good to connect. People need to connect. Food prices have gone up. It's
Yes,
crazy. But still, they don't connect that we need these fisher folks. We need these farmers.
not to even bring into the table the issues concerning the West Philippine Sea, where on fisher folks cannot go near some areas in the Chinese call it the South China Sea, but it's our West Philippine Sea. So there's an ongoing claim. Vietnam is also claiming ownership of some parts of the West Philippine Sea and also Malaysia. I think this is where I can clearly situate my own practice. My art is informed with the socio-political issues from way back in Negros since 30 years ago. I mentioned earlier that I went to Negros to go into sugar farming only to end up an activist, and finally left farming. So my ex-wife now, my two children are attending the farm. They belong to different generation, but the same old problems still exist.
And your children are also involved in Viva XCon.
My kids are involved. Tuki actually is part of Viva XCon. So he's the one in Bacolod right now. Joaquin is not involved this edition because he's going to school
Okay.
in Manila. But I think Martha, for the first time, Viva XCon will really be the edition that will have the indigenous people of Panay Island, the fishermen of Malandog and Bantayan, the blacksmithing communities in Ojong in Antique, the pottery workshop also in Antique, and somehow indirectly representing the artisanal asin producers in Guimaras. We're making the Biennale more a platform where we bring out the issues concerning our poor people.
Pee-wee, can you talk about the format of the Biennale in terms of how those conversations are happening? Who do you want to be involved in that conversation?
Primarily, we would like the artists to directly engage with local community, because even our artists in the islands need to be informed about even the indigenous people living among us. Also, people in the cities have really very little knowledge about people living in the mountains where our indigenous people are safely settled. These are the two sectors that we would like to bring together. But of course, since it's also a global event, we have international resource speakers coming to Antique to share their knowledge and their insights on global issues that affect also rural communities in other parts of the world. As you know, Viva XCon stands for exhibition and conference. So actually the conference is an equally important component of the Biennale. For this edition, we're having some curators taking part in a panel with Ruang Rupa, who curated and directed the recent Documenta 15 in Kassel. There has been much controversy over the handling of Ruang Rupa of the edition. We wanted to bring into Viva XCon all the issues that concerned the Asian artists who actually participated in Germany. I think there has been much misconception about Asians having invaded Europe through Documenta 15 and brought a lot of people to Kassel, and the Germans didn't like what happened there. That panel actually will have other curators discussing their own views, not only about Documenta, but about forthcoming biennales, like Richard Birkett, the forthcoming curator for the Glasgow Biennale, will be part of it. John Tain, the incoming curator for the Lahore Biennale in Pakistan, will be part of it. The academic Leonor Vega from Portugal will be part of the panel. Julian Fox, the director of Goethe in the Philippines, will be part of it. The more important panel will discuss about the estuaries of the island, which to us is a very important component of our economy. The estuaries are usually the source of life, of food, of the rural industries like fishing also and farming and all that. But we are losing our estuaries to modern development, like converting these areas into resort facilities and other high-end developments.
Yeah.
So there will be experts on environment, experts on natural resources that will be speaking in our panel. That is totally non-art, because we believe that it's also important for artists to have knowledge about all these things. In the 80s, a very strong movement was initiated, the social realist movement, the SR movement in the Philippines, that was popularized by artists who were again identified with the left. These were artists who were into figurative paintings, representing the farmers and the fishermen, the workers, and raising their issues in their work. Since I was pretty much part of the whole scene, I knew how these artists approach the subject. In the first place, they were part of organizations that are very much in touch with the issues during the time. If you will look at the present art scene in Manila, most people and young artists, even emerging artists, are into social realism. What do they know about the local issues? What do they know about the farmers, about the fisher folks, about the peasants? They're not part of bigger organizations that can provide them education about their subjects. So what's happening now is that young people, the art market, are gaining from the poverty that our poor people are suffering from. Can you imagine a very successful commercial artist who merely paints about poor sugar workers and poor fisher folks could earn millions from the market, and yet there's nothing that goes back to the subject matter? How cruel is that when these people are already oppressed, and our own artists continue this oppression by using the subject matter to gain something for themselves without knowing the real issues that affect the sector? So that is exactly the thing that we would like. These are the issues that we would like to bring up during Viva XCon. We're not against the market. We're not against the commercial galleries. I always say I am being represented by Silverlens. I live and I am able to do my practice because of my representation with Silverlens. Before Silverlens, I was being represented by a commercial gallery based in Singapore. Well, Martha as well. We're both represented by Silverlens.
Yeah.
But that should not prevent us, or should not prevent people being represented by galleries to extend their practice in ways wherein they can help uplift the lives of ordinary people in their localities.
Katey, I know you're with Silverlens New York. Are you able to speak about Silverlens Manila's vision in the artists that they choose to represent? Martha and Pee-wee, their work is informed by their deep activism. How is that relationship to the artists that they represent? Are they aware of the issue that Pee-wee brought up of artists who benefit without actually understanding the people that they're representing?
I mean, I think hyper aware. To sort of back up a little, there are 30 artists represented by the gallery that are quite diverse in their issues in which they engage with, and also the sort of media they work with. Martha and Pee-wee are of this core cohort of artists that engage with not just the issues, but the community. I was brought to the gallery because I am perilously American to help with those like cultural translations, right? Having just like landed in the States, here we go. And we have these conversations all the time about what do these different things mean. In the US, identity politics and politics are synonymous in this kind of current moment. The emergence of identity politics is something that enabled the gallery to be in New York. From an American lens, if we look back to like the summer of 2020, all of the Black Lives Matter protests, and then the Stop Asian Hate, that put cracks in the system that let us be here. However, when I look at Martha's work, when I look at Pee-wee's work, I mentioned also Yi Ilan, the topics are so political, but it is an identity politics. It's the politics of community, of environment. A lot of the different artists, including Martha and Pee-wee, are approaching politics and activism and that more sort of diffuse community-based way.
Most of my adult life, I would identify as a New Yorker first and then Filipino second. With Martha's storytelling, I had this moment where I realized my caring about US politics was pointless. That being Filipino, this connection to what Martha was doing, I suddenly realized that my involvement here would never matter, that my connection to my Filipino-ness and to the Philippines mattered so much more. Asian Americans who are activists are focused hyper locally. It sounds like it has a relationship to how you're both thinking in trying to hone in on what the community actually needs. A couple of months ago, we did a conversation with two Filipino American artists who moved to the Philippines after spending their whole lives here. Where do you see your work in that greater context of what's happening with youth and the direction that the Philippines is going in?
I would like to make it clear that I am no longer involved with the left. When I came home from exile in 1989 and started Viva XCon, I thought that to start Viva XCon without any baggage of being identified with any organization, I decided to resign all my affiliations with organizations identified with the law. While I remain to be very political and that I still consider my work to be a work of an activist, I am no longer part of any political group. Where do I see my work within this larger context, especially having another Marcos sitting in power? We think that the struggle that I was part of 30 years ago continues. It continues with a new generation of activists. It continues with the new generation of leaders of the left, which I know I will never be part of. Although I am very sympathetic with the left, I believe that on my own capacity as an individual citizen, especially at my age at 70, I can really do very little. And that little that I do, I would rather focus in my studio and continue to organize Viva XCon in the coming years.
I'm very, very focused, really specific place here. I'm actually focusing right now on just the watershed area where I live, actually, and that small island close to Negros, because I also see that there's a potential of showing these two places as a case study or as an example. If we are able to achieve something in this small place that are my friends and my neighbors, I think then we can show a way of doing things differently, perhaps by learning from the past and how, let's say, activists or organizations or people have been operating in the past. I work a lot with young people. I've always shared what I know, and I know the video camera and how powerful it is. Robert, who's the island coordinator, Robert Fuentes, I met him years ago, 15 years ago, I don't remember, but he was dancing. He was a b-boy, a dancer. And they would practice under this one light post there we had every night. And I was so impressed because of this determination of this group of 12 kids, I don't know what to do with dancers. I don't know what to do with dance, but I see a potential, if I could just share with them this other world or these other opportunities. I don't want people to become artists, but at least they could be creative in looking at themselves and finding solutions, I think it's really a way of thinking. So, I really start with the camera. So teaching, letting people discover what its power can be. He just called me a couple of months ago and he said, T, I finally understand all that work we were doing before. And he said, I want to come back. I want to come home. Whatever you're doing, I want to join again, And I had already kind of in December, I had a little bit of I was just questioning myself, and when I got that call from him, one of these many, many young people that, I had tried to share something with. And now with the neighbors during the pandemic, these girls, they call themselves the Bahia Warriors. They have been documenting and filming their grandparents, their parents, fathers, talking about their place. And they're proud now. They're farmers. But they're just so proud. They own land and what that means. By documenting, all these conversations come up. Remembering is an act of resistance. Even though fisher folks are being moved off and people are being moved off their lands, a place cannot be taken away from them. I think that's really my obsession with having people themselves document themselves. And then how can we use this? What is this tool and what is this power that we have now? I'm very, very interested in that. And I think when we all got on the water together, it was pandemic. We were not allowed to have that many people for the basketball in the evening. In the fiesta, there were hundreds of people, but we were only allowed to come with 37 boats and leaders. And we were so proud. Robert and Seth, these two guys that I film with all the time now, these kids that are now very technical in filming, we had been practicing for months, like how were we going to document this big event? And then when it came, it was raining. They had been practicing drones and we had cameras everywhere and we couldn't film, but it was so emotional. It was so beautiful. And I was the only one holding a camera because I was wearing a special hat. I remember filming and crying. My pants actually got wet because I was sitting on a plastic bottle of gasoline and it was biting, you know, but I just couldn't let go. To get everyone together, even for a moment, you know, that's hopeful when different ages come together, believing in something. Hopefully, that's something we can bring to Viva XCon. This kind of hope and this kind of energy. I get so sad because we've got so many colleges now, but they're just creating factory workers. You're not allowed to question. There's no critical thinking. By coming together and having conversations and being part of these gatherings or having young people and older people and different ages come together, I think it's vital that the young people are involved. PV is always, you've always been involving everybody. A platform like Viva XCon is so powerful and so important because how do you pass also knowledge? We don't just talk about fisher folks passing knowledge. We also have to talk about artists passing knowledge. We have to talk about all of us. We're all part of this, and we have to involve the local government unit. We need to work together. Otherwise, we cannot move forward. There's just no other way. To see young people, fisher folks, farmers, be really proud of who they are. If they can stand in front on the stage with the mayor and the head of the police and the head of the maritime police, and then they can just say who they are and what they want, is really powerful.
This edition, we'll have a special section for students that we organized under the Rural Architecture Forum. And these are students of architecture of 3 universities in Panay Island who will be gathering together. There are about 60 of them and who are trying to change thinking about doing architecture to benefit people in the countryside who have no access to architectural services.
Are you live streaming anything, or are you documenting in a way that it can be shared later?
We are definitely documenting, but because the last edition was done purely by online because of the pandemic, people are so excited to have a face-to-face edition of the Biennale. We did not prepare for any online platform to share outside, but we're definitely documenting and publishing a book on it that we hope to distribute.
I think Filipinos are so brave. It just strikes me like all the time, not just the kind of bravery in the face of so much hardship, but the desire to uplift everyone is so moving to me and makes me endlessly proud.
Filipinos have very, very less in life. There's nothing to lose, actually.
I think we have no choice, Pee-wee. How can you sit and watch and see
Exactly.
your friends?
Well, lots of people do.
Ah.
Lots of people don't empower themselves.
I have to remember Ilan. I mean, Ilan is amazing, and glad that Katey mentioned her because we did that journey together as, you know, the first show in New York, and she was really saying that, you know, we are the enablers. We are enablers. We need to use the position we are and the opportunity that we have to, like here, to be in this conversation, to be this voice. I'm very scared of it because it's a responsibility, but I didn't think that this would be part of it. I just thought I would just go home and I try to do the best that I can. And then all of a sudden it becomes much more than that. It's true. We can be enablers in so many ways. We can affect things.
Thank you so much. Silverlens, Viva XCon, Goodlands, all of those pieces working together are so powerful. The people that watch this conversation, I hope that it encourages them to research more and support your respective work. Thank you so
Nancy.
much.
Thank you for having us,
Thank
Nancy.
you also, Nancy, Katie. Thank you for being part of this conversation as well.
Katie. Yeah.
For the-
Thanks for this platform.
Thank you so much, Nancy.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Martha. Good
Bye.
night, Pee-wee.
Bye,
Bye.
Bye,
Martha.
guys. Have a good day.